Nolan. This is going to be fun, dude. It's low-key.
Yeah.
There's going to be no gotcha stuff or anything like that. I just want to talk the stories, talk news. And I understand that you can't give your opinion. I may ask questions where you're like, I can't do that. And it's not me trying to say that. It's just when you're, okay, full screen's up, so we're about 30 seconds away. It's just when you're doing something like this, it's, you get it.
Yeah.
All right, so you got it in public, Judah. Okay, Judah Wickhauer, I do see the full screen, my friend. It's in public. Guys, we are shortly going to be on air with Nolan Stout, the City Hall reporter from the Charlottesville Daily Progress. I'm looking forward to getting to know Nolan. I hope to have you on the show. We already have Rachel Hallmark Cookta. Rachel Cookta on the broadcast. Welcome to the show, Rachel Cookta. Quentin Johnson, already on the broadcast. Welcome to the show, Quentin Johnson. If you guys have questions, post them in the comment or chat box. Judah, I want to go live pretty soon here. 3, 2, 1. Guys, what's up? Jerry Miller, good to be with you on a Wednesday here from our I Love CVille studios. A lot we're going to cover with City Hall Daily Progress reporter Nolan Stout. He joins us in a matter of moments. First, let's thank the good people behind this program. Not only my friend Judah Wickhauer, the producer. Judah, we're going to get you a camera one day, my friend. I'm Jerry Miller. Greenberry's Coffee, one of the fantastic sponsors of the show. Did you know, guys, over the last 26 years, Greenberry's Coffee has gone from a husband and wife team out of the McIntyre Office Park where they were driving their coffee around in a beat-up Honda Civic to having more than 30 locations now worldwide. Qatar, Japan, Saudi Arabia, Washington, D.C., West Coast. And guys, it started right here in Charlottesville, Virginia. It's the kind of entrepreneurial story that I absolutely love at I Love CVille. Also, we thank good people, Scott Wagner Chiropractic and Sports Medicine. Who's got your back? Scott Wagner Chiropractic and Sports Medicine. Judah Wickhauer, on that note, let's go to the two-shot. And let's welcome Nolan Stout to the I Love CVille show. Nolan, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
A lot I want to cover, man. And I want to give you some props. I want to give the Daily Progress some props. I want to give the new editor, who I believe was your former boss at the Daily News Record, if you correct me if I'm wrong, some props. And I want to give you some props, because what I've noticed since you've gotten in the mix at the Daily Progress, you are writing stories that people want to read, people want to talk about. Sometimes it irks some people. Sometimes people are like, thank you for reporting this. And that's the job of a watchdog journalist. It's not to please the masses. It's to report hard news. So we start by saying, I think you're doing tremendous work. And then we go to how you ended up in Charlottesville at the Daily Progress before we get into the articles that you've been writing.
Yeah, I worked for 3 years in Harrisonburg at the Daily News Record covering Rockingham County, so got plenty of experience there, and then kind of felt like it was time to move on and do something different, because writing the same stories over and over again and kind of getting into a routine, wanted to challenge myself a little more, and Charlottesville's definitely a little bit more of a challenge compared to Rockingham County.
How so?
There's a lot more going on, a lot more of a magnifying glass on this area than. A lot of changes going on here, especially everything since August 12th. There's just the whole government's changing. There's more activism and all that stuff. There's so many things that you wouldn't even think about having to cover before you came here, but there's really a lot of stuff going on here.
Well said. Nolan Stout, our guest, City Hall reporter, Charlottesville Daily Progress. Anja Andalik, thank you for joining us on the broadcast. Kimberly Payne-Hawk, thank you for joining us. Lauren Linsky, Caitlin, thank you for joining us. Caitlin Lewis, Gilly Garth, Mark Wogman, you're a popular guy. We promoted you coming on the show because people have been talking about your stories. You go from the Daily News Record to Charlottesville, Virginia. Interestingly, as a journalist, you happen to go into a market at a very explosive time. You come into Charlottesville at a time where, as a journalist, where you're covering the market, there is not only a ton going on. You have the affordable housing piece. You have the statues. You have city councilors. Perhaps some folks say focus more on social justice than economic stimulus. Just talk about that and put that in perspective. I mean, you go from potentially I'm not trying to marginalize the previous job. Maybe sleepier job to something that is in a national news cycle constantly.
Yeah, there was, and I would not say it's sleepier. I'd say there's more of a there's more different aspects here. I mean, I think I came in at a time where some of the stuff, or the August 12th stuff, were the big explosive things that came out of that have sort of died down, and now we're kind of dealing with the
ramifications.
The ramifications,
the
ripples
fallout
out of that, and how that's going to change things going forward, because, it's been more than a year since that happened, and just this week the trial wrapped up of James Fields, and everything's sort of changing. Everybody's looking at the government. People are still coming out to council meetings. I mean, they're not shutting down council meetings like they did before, but there's still that activism that's happening, that there's such an interest in what's going on here, that from the people that were awakened by that.
Did you, when you took the job or you were interested in the opening at the Daily Progress, were you considering all these factors?
I knew about all these factors because we were close enough in Harrisonburg that we kind of kept
and you're
an eye
a news
on there.
junkie.
Yeah.
Like
kept
me.
an eye on everything going there because it would come across the wire, because there is that national and statewide spotlight on here after August 12th.
I mean, it seems to me, doing what you're doing, where you're reporting on City Hall, you are reporting on the people that have to deal with the fallout, the ramifications of August 12th. So from a reporter's position, I think you have maybe the go-to spot, and I'm talking because of marketplace dynamics. I'm saying it's the go-to spot because of the fallout from 8/12. Perhaps if the fallout from 8/12 there, the City Hall reporter with the Daily Progress doesn't have as much sexy a coverage. And I think one of the elements that's come from this fallout is City Council trying to set their own pay. Why they're setting their own pay, I believe, is a direct fallout of 8/12, because City Council believes, Nolan, they have to work more hours as a result of 8/12. And because they're working more hours because of the 8/12 fallout, they want more money for their time and effort, which I can understand. I want to cover that with you because you've depicted it well with your coverage. I first want to talk about the City Council's credit card usage. And it's a story that I think, when you were writing the story, and guys, he is a beat reporter. He's not an editorial, he's not a columnist. So he is reporting facts, black and white facts only here. But when you were writing the story, the itemization of City Council's credit card usage, did you know in real time that this was going to be an impactful piece?
I thought so, because once I got the statements and tried to find other stories about it, it didn't seem that anyone had actually written about it. So it didn't seem that anybody actually knew that they had credit cards. So that was something that I thought, this is kind of what our job is, to let people know what.
Be a watchdog.
Yeah, look at government spending, what they're doing, things that you might not know that they're doing, and just to put the news out there.
I think, and I agree with you guys, Nolan Stout, our guest, City Hall reporter, Charlottesville Daily Progress, his byline, his brain power, I want to call it investigative. I'll call it investigative journalism. Spotlighted the fact that first city councilors had credit cards. You know what? I agree with you. I do not think many constituents in Charlottesville, Virginia, many of the Daily Progress's readers are the folks that follow I Love CVille. And Harold Martin, thank you for joining us on the broadcast. I don't think many people even knew the city councilors had credit cards.
Yeah, and I definitely didn't know until I decided to look into it. And I mean, when I was reporting the second story that I did about that, I called around to some other places, and it's kind of hit or miss if other places do it. I mean,
other municipalities.
Yeah, other localities.
Yeah.
I mean, I called just because I have the connections to Harrisonburg, and they have one card that is checked out. It's not in everybody's name, so it's sort of a different system. They do have a credit card system, but it doesn't exactly work the same as the city councilors here have it in their wallet, and they just take it with them wherever they go instead of having that checkouts like they do in Harrisonburg. I know that Roanoke, their councilors and mayor have one, and I tried to get Richmond on the phone, but they didn't get back to me. But I know that Albemarle County does not have any, and so it's really just like a whole bunch of other things in Virginia government. It really varies from place to place wherever you go. Which
makes the news important. Because if it varies from place to place, there potentially is not an accountability or structure and infrastructure or rules and regulations. So we need the Nolan Stouts of the world to keep an eye on what's going on. Tiffany Smith, thank you for joining us on the broadcast. We're talking about City Council's credit card usage. This man, Nolan Stout, wrote the story that I think is one of the most talked about stories of Q4 2018 from the Daily Progress. I got to ask some questions. Okay, you don't have to answer, but I got to ask them. And I think you can appreciate that with what we're doing. Who tipped you off? How'd you come down this road? This is what I have heard. And you can rebuttal, you can shoot it down. People want to know. I have heard that an informed citizen, and give me the acronym. It's when you do a FOIA request. What's the
Freedom of Information Act.
Yeah, so I had it right.
FOIA.
Yeah, FOIA request. So a concerned citizen did an FOIA request and wanted to see the credit card usage for council. Got this information, passed it along to perhaps you or the Daily Progress. Am I in the right neighborhood?
That's not exactly how it went down.
Okay.
That's, I can't say how exactly we were tipped off to it, but there was no, I've seen that Mayor Walker had said that somebody had FOIA'd her council statements and then gave it to us. That didn't happen. That we just was a direction someone told us to look in, and we decided to look in it and found what we found.
Okay, how was it difficult to find the information?
No, I just submitted the request and asked for credit card statements between a certain date and 5 days that Brian Wheeler got it back to me.
And Brian Wheeler's good at his job. I think Brian Wheeler is good at his job. I know Brian well. The information comes back to you. Was it so it was not difficult information to get? And it was clear, succinct, pretty easily itemized?
Yeah, just it's on our website with that
story.
I
saw the PDF.
That's exactly what we got.
Yeah, so when you're highlighting this and you're writing and talking about it, when you're analyzing the credit card usage, did you as a reporter, and I'm talking as a reporter here, you as a reporter, did any of them red flag more than others?
The ones that I highlighted in the stories, which is why I wrote them, and I kind of went through and looked at the ones that it was like, okay, that one kind of jumps out, this one jumps out, I don't know what this one is, I don't know what that acronym's for. So then after that, then you go and ask, hey, where were you on this date, or what is this expenditure, or just to get some more clarification on it.
Yeah, and I thought you did a good job. I think it was really clear. Talk to me about the follow-up story.
The follow-up story is because I didn't feel like the first had enough about the oversight or how the policy works.
And you did a good job of comparing and contrasting it to other locations.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to do too, to see if it's unique to here, if other people do it, and kind of what the accountability system is. How they turn the receipts, who looks over the receipts, and how that everything gets signed off. If there's ever been any question of the expenditures before, kind of get into the weeds with that instead of just looking at here's where the money was spent.
Nolan Stout, our guest, Charlottesville Daily Progress City Hall reporter, kind enough to joining us on the I Love CVille show. Thanks to Greenberry's Coffee and Scott Wagner Chiropractic and Sports Medicine. Sarah Humphrey, thank you for joining us. Amanda, thank you for joining us. When the first story was out about city council credit card usage, I would have to imagine your email inbox was flooded for a few days afterwards.
Yeah, I got a couple of emails, some tweets, some Facebook messages.
All over the spectrum, right?
All over the spectrum.
And how does someone with such a limited time and such an important beat like you respond to all that?
Well,
can you even?
You can't even, because sometimes people have their opinions and you can try to argue with them, but that's not really my job. My job is if they
to report the news.
Yeah, if they have legitimate questions other than just saying that they don't agree or stuff like that, then it's not really my job to try to persuade them. It's just to
report
say,
the news.
Here's what it is. If you need more clarification, you can ask me that, and I'll gladly give it to you. But other than that, that's really the things that I was responding to.
Sam King, thank you for joining us on the broadcast. Sam King, we appreciate you very much, sir. John Crawford, thank you for joining us on the broadcast. Nolan Stout, our guest. He's the byline, the author behind credit card usage, itemization, and the Charlottesville Daily Progress. One of the things that I was taken aback about, and some of the feedback that I saw, and some of the feedback I saw from Mayor Walker's camp, was that the story was billed as almost a racist hit piece. And, I understand there's limited things you can say because you're a beat reporter. And on top of that, you have to maintain connections with folks that you're going to cover moving forward. So I'll say some of it for you. I thought that was ridiculous, what she said. And why I thought it was ridiculous was because you strictly wrote a story about their credit card usage, okay? I saw no agenda. I saw no, this is where I want to go, this is what I want to talk about. It was credit card usage itemization. I mean, it could have been done in some ways in an Excel file and just given to the readers, right? You did it in a way where it was more organized and easier to read. And I think why the perspective was out there about it could be a racist hit piece was because the mention of the pair of shoes at Ragged Mountain Running Shop with Mayor Walker, or the lunch or dinner, whatever it was at Hooters out of state. But from your standpoint, and I'll leave it open-ended so you can offer any perspective from you want. From your standpoint, and I don't want to assume, if I was in your shoes and I saw Hooters purchase on city Charlottesville civilians' money, taxpayers' money, and I saw ridiculous hotel expenditures, and Kathleen Galvin is going to join us on the program a week from Friday to talk about this as well, and I saw a pair of shoes purchased at a local shoe shop, I would also highlight that. Because the people need to know this. Open-ended, anything you can offer.
Yeah, I mean, it was written with no agenda. The only agenda was to show that, and the way that it was laid out was, West spent the most money. So, I mean, West is first, and then second, third, fourth. And Heather Hill doesn't use her, so there was only 4. So, I mean, I went through it, the order of who spent the money the most to the least, and it was organized. It's just organized that way. I mean, I could have done it from least to most, but I mean, it doesn't really make sense to do it that way.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree. And another thing that people don't, I used to work at the Daily Progress. I finished as an editor in the sports department. I don't know if this is still the case, but when I was there, staff writers, beat writers, we did not write the headlines. Mm-hmm. You didn't write that headline, did you?
No.
Yeah. Okay, so do you hear what I'm saying? Did not write the headline, and he organized the content from the person spending the most money to the least amount of money, which is how you report a story. Can you respond at all to the feedback about the racist hit piece comment?
No, I don't feel comfortable.
Okay, that's fair. I totally get that. And you know what? I think you did a fantastic job. When you did the follow-up story, what was the feedback on the follow-up compared to the first?
A little less feedback, it seemed, but I mean, some of the feedback I got was because of the people who had, after the first story, who had legitimate questions. Those were answered in the second piece, more about who signs off on this, what's the review process, has there been any questions before, how long have we been doing this, stuff like that. That was the stuff that the people who had legitimate questions and wanted more information were looking for, and that's what I really were focused on the second story.
Excellent. Good answer right there. Judah, audio sounds good? Thank you, sir. Mike Signer has a limit that's much lower than the others. Why? Is that because he was just...
It's because...
He just got it first?
Well, it's because that before 2017, it was just going through the mayors. And as far as I know, that the original limit was set the first time the mayor had it. It was just passed down. And when he got his, after Nakai became mayor, he just kept that one instead of getting a new one. So his limit just stayed at what the mayor's was before. Understood. It's for no other reason than that.
It's not, so I want to clarify, not a reflection on anything to do with Mike.
No.
Okay, it was just a reflection of timing.
It's just the way that the handing it down went. And he just kept the one that he had from when he was mayor. The
change, and correct me if I'm wrong here, from story 1 to story 2 on the credit card usage, was there a change in Mike's spending at South by Southwest?
No.
Okay, still the after-hours transportation.
There's still the timing was still the same, yeah.
Timing was still the same. Do you think that after this story was reported and it got some attention, and it should get some attention, and a lot of people are interested on the broadcast now, have we seen changes already? In credit card usage, how they're reported? Here's a question that came up to me, and this came up with Rob Schilling of The Rob Schilling Show, the last Republican city councilor to win in Charlottesville. And he said, I think we need to talk about the councilor's credit card usage, but also whoever that person is that is approving and allowing the credit card usage. Because city council just can't say, I have the Charlottesville credit card, I'm going to go spend the money without accountability. There is someone holding the councilors accountable. So Rob was going, is the councilors are getting the attention about the credit card usage, but why are we not talking about the person that's holding them accountable?
And I don't remember, but I feel like that might have been before the second story came out. And it does go, the councilors have it, they get the receipts, they give it off to the clerk who was Paige Rice, and Brian Wheeler's doing it now. And then it goes to accounts receivable through the finance department, finance director is the final one to sign off. But each person along that step is asking questions, and by the time it gets to the finance director, and he told me that basically all those questions have been asked and answered, but if he still has any, he will go and ask the councilors. He's asked them before if they didn't have a receipt, which I point out in the second story, that I had asked for receipts in a separate FOIA request, and there was an email chain that somebody had asked for West to send in a receipt because they didn't have it. So there is someone who is asking, we need documentation. We need to know what you were doing, why you were there. There is accountability. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you feel that accountability process is a process that is being done correctly from your reporting, from what you've heard?
I think that's up for the city residents to decide.
Okay, that's fair. That's a good response. I think that's a fair response. Perhaps another story?
This is something we'll definitely be checking on. I'm not sure how often, maybe quarterly or something, just to update, what's happened since the last time that we wrote about it. Just new expenditures, stuff like that.
I want to give you some props, man. I mean, I've been in Charlottesville for 18 years, since 2000, and I've been working in the news business since 2003, so for 15. And now, granted, the entire time they didn't have credit cards. Mm-hmm. Okay, no one's reported in a story like this. No one has put the spotlight on this. No one has given it the attention it needs, and I think it needed attention because this is taxpayers' money. And some folks are saying, and I know you can't answer this question, some folks are wondering if, say, like a Councilman Bellamy is traveling to actually procure knowledge for Charlottesville or traveling to better his career, his political brand, and doing that while passing on the receipts and the cost to City of Charlottesville. One of them that stood out is the meeting, perhaps, and educate me here, with the Black Caucus in D.C. A lot of folks, Rob Schilling asked this question on this very show, and I went on Rob's show yesterday and talked about it. Why is Councilman Bellamy going to Washington, D.C. to meet with the Black Caucus, and does that business pertain to the City of Charlottesville and the City of Charlottesville government, and are credit cards being used to subsidize this trip?
And that's, I had talked to him about that, and I believe what he had said was that it was kind of to lobby for legislation that, I don't remember the exact legislation, but to talk to legislators to try to get something that might help Charlottesville. And
you think that's legit?
It's up to the city residents to decide. As Megan Ryan from Coalition for Open Government said, it's important that we get this information and it's in the hands of the people whose money is actually being spent to determine if that's acceptable for them, or if they want to ask for some changes, or if it's up to the people whose money is being spent. It's just the important part is that they're able to see how their money is being spent.
Very well said. Nolan Stout, our guest, guys, Charlottesville Daily Progress City Hall reporter. He reported on credit card usage by City Council. I think one of the stories that is the most talked about stories of quarter 4 in 2018 of the Daily Progress. Constance Wyatt, thank you for joining us. Peyton Alley, Adam Frazier, John Crawford. We're shining the spotlight on City Council, on our local government, and we're doing it with someone that has access that a lot of us don't. He's the City Hall reporter for the Daily Progress. I think you did a great job, man. And I know you didn't come on the show for a pat on the back. You're a very confident, secure guy. I think your job as a watchdog is to get people talking and to spotlight things that need to be spotlighted. And it takes a lot of courage and a lot of backbone and fortitude to do that. And you showed that. I'm excited that you are on the Charlottesville beat because I think you have, and I can say this, you can't say this, I think you got balls, okay? A lot of people would not have done that story, and I think you know that, and I think you dealt with some of that fallout, and I think you're like, this is my job, and I respect the hell out of that, dude. Another concept, another story I want to talk about that you are covering extremely well is City Council wanting to set their own pay, and I'm so torn on this, Nolan, and I understand that you have to report facts on this program. I'm going to give a little bit of background and then bring you in. Initially, Mayor Walker wanted to set pay based on some kind of sliding scale. The 20% mark was talked about. 20% of the city manager's pay would be allocated to salary for City Council. The problem with that, ladies and gentlemen, is City Council negotiates city manager's pay. So if City Council is negotiating city manager's pay, you're creating some kind of like nepotistic, incestual conflict of interest thing there. So I think that's a terrible idea from Mayor Walker. I think the idea of raising pay is something that needs to be discussed. Why I think it's something to be discussed, and I'm going to bring Nolan in here, and Amy Wicks-Horn, thank you for joining us on the show. Why I think City Council's pay need to be raised is because since A12, city council has become, I think, more of a full-time and a more prominent position than pre-812. And the councilors are saying that as well. So I think they should be paid for their sweat, their equity. Let's start open-ended with Nolan. What are your thoughts, or what are you hearing? What are you hearing on city councilors wanting to up their pay, Nolan?
And that, with the tying it to the city manager's salary, that was something that Kathy Galvin and Mike Signer had brought up about, we set that salary, so we don't want it to be an incentive for a higher city manager's salary so that we get paid more. And there was some discussion of, tying it to your day job salary. There's some discussion of tying
Which
it
Mike said was a bad idea, because that would encourage people to potentially quit their day job.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I agree with.
There's positive and negative arguments no matter what you're going to do. I mean, some people said tie it to the area of median income. And Mike Signer's concern is always, he's said before, that it's a citizen legislature, that shouldn't be a full-time job. But since August 12th, since Maurice Jones has left, since Paige Rice has left, that there have
Al
been...
Thomas?
Al Thomas has left. There's been a lot of...
turnover.
There's been a lot more work that they have to do because, and this conversation goes with creating an office of counsel. Do you want to have a chief of staff, a policy analyst, a community outreach coordinator who does a lot more?
Overkill.
Like, if you want someone to do all, that's what they're going back and forth with. If you want someone to do all that work, then they shouldn't be doing the more work, is what they're saying. But if you want the counselors to keep doing more work, then do you necessarily need to have all those positions? So that's what a lot of the back and forth was, is that they need to decide what they want to do with the city government first. And it did pass 3-2 to ask the General Assembly, which is honestly
Mayor
hit or
Walker
miss.
straight up said it's going to fail.
It's honestly hit or miss, especially since the House is Republican controlled, and it's just Charlottesville is very Democratic, and even Heather Hill voted against the
quiet one is what I call her.
They changed, and her concern was more that instead of tying it to anything, they just said that. And what you have to do with Virginia Code is that Virginia Code has these guidelines, and if you want to work outside the guidelines, you have to change your charter to say...
You have to amend the charter.
You have to say that, well, we don't have to follow the guidelines. And so her concern was that it was just kind of open-ended, that they could set it with no limit.
Totally.
And that's
that's so fair.
At some point, that's a legitimate concern. Is like, if future councils, what the limit's going to be.
Because it sets a precedent.
Yeah, and that's that's some of the concerns about it. But I think that the three councilors who voted in favor of it just want something to happen. And also the discussion around how the city government's going to be set up is kind of the reason that Wes's proposed charter amendment was voted down, because they said, we have so much more that we want to try to do, that this is just one little thing, and it's not going to necessarily fix the problems that we're seeing, that we've noticed since August 12th.
And Wes's proposed charter amendment was having the mayor being a popular vote office.
Yeah, just direct election of the mayor.
Yeah, that one position.
Yeah.
And the problem, I think, with that is the mayor should be appointed by council, because council has to work with the mayor. The mayor is council's face. So I feel like those 5 people in council should be the ones that are picking the mayor, because they're the ones who have to work with this position. First, I want to go back to the city council setting their own pay. So we're now going to the Virginia Assembly. I agree that this is going to be shot down, especially since the assembly is controlled by conservatives. Okay, you're basically saying to a bunch of conservatives, middle-aged white conservatives, we want to spend more tax dollars to pay politicians. Yeah, that's pretty much what's happening.
Yeah, yeah, that's how they're going to see it.
That's how they're going to see it, and we know it's going to get shut down.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's where I'm going with this.
But then again, it does depend. There's the final. Ben Klein's seat is up for election, and the 18th. If the Democrat there wins, it'll be a 50-50 split in the House. So, and then the Senate's 21-19 Republican, and there's always, 1 or 2 people who could flip. So it really depends. It depends on what happens in Ben Klein's seat. I don't see the Democrat winning there. It's always been. It's like a Republican stronghold in that area, the rural mountain area of the Western Virginia. But
it's like the fifth district.
It's like the 5th district. Yeah. It's the 6th. It's the 6th congressional, but the 24th.
I meant by the stranglehold of the Republicans.
Yeah.
The feedback you're getting when City Council, Catherine Matthews, thank you for joining us on the show. Nolan Stout is our guest. He's the City Hall reporter for the Daily Progress. We're talking about City Council, specifically issues like credit card usage, councilors wanting to set their own pay, whether or not Charlottesville should be a strong mayor, which is something that's being discussed. West Bellamy wanting the mayoral position being a popular vote, or the person that gets the most votes becomes the mayor. He made an interesting statement, I thought, when he went on record, and I was surprised that he says this because he knows how to play the game. He went on record and he said, no one's looking at Charlottesville City Council as a full-time position. Mm-hmm. He basically said, I think this is, if I'm reading between the lines, there's two types of folks that are going to take the Charlottesville City Council spot. There's the folks that this is the ceiling of what they want to do politically, and they just want to get involved civically because they care passionately about Charlottesville and they see themselves as a leader at the local level. Mm-hmm. I kind of see myself maybe in that category. The other one is the person that wants to use City Council as a springboard to a political career. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably the category West fits, because I think we all see that he's building a brand, has a book out, is meeting with the Black Caucus, is meeting with important people. We can see he's trying to build a political career. West says that the position is not a full-time, lifetime position. I got to choose how I'm going to ask you this question. I can't ask you, what do you think about that? I can't ask, what has been the feedback to that statement he has made?
I haven't really got any feedback on that, but I think that...
Did that take you aback?
I think that in the context of the discussion at the time, that where Mike Signer was talking about, he doesn't want people to quit their jobs if you make it tied to their day job, and then that's where Wes was saying, this just isn't a full-time job, and I think that him and Kathy and Mike have a different perspective because they were here before August 12th, so before everything changed, they had a chief of staff, they had a city manager, they had all those positions, so it was a different job than it was after August 12th, because that's when everything changed. That's really, like, there's Charlottesville before August 12th and there's Charlottesville now. So everything is different since then. So that's why it may not have been a full-time job then, because I used to cover sometimes government meetings that went maybe an hour, and you're lucky if public comment even lasts that short amount of time here in Charlottesville, because Charlottesville has more of I'm pretty sure that Mike has said this before, an activist council where they go out there, they want to meet with the people, they have their issues they want to try to get through. So instead of having staff take a bigger role in, reviewing things and having things before they get to council, then instead it's in council chambers. They're doing more work. Like, you watch the work as it happens instead of it happens behind the scenes.
Yeah, totally.
And then it comes to council for a rubber stamp and then just moves on. That's what's happening in Charlottesville.
To your point, I follow CVille Tomorrow very closely, and I'm losing the name of the new reporter that's covering the Charlottesville beat, who does a tremendous job at CVille Tomorrow. In fact,
Elliot?
Elliot.
Yeah.
Elliot sent out a tweet at the last city council meeting, and he goes like, am I going to see my wife before bedtime?
Yeah,
every
time. Yeah.
Then he says, Elliot, so this was my favorite tweet. It's the only spot when I'm leaving the city council meeting, the 24-hour Kroger for food tonight.
Yeah.
Basically, because you guys are working till like 1 in the morning.
Yeah, my first day was the city council meeting, and I didn't get out till 12:45.
How are you filing are you filing your story at the meeting?
Yeah.
You're writing at this chaos, you're filing your story.
And that's what since August 12th, sometimes these meetings have become so long that sometimes the story is just public comment and what people are talking about.
Because the nut of the meeting doesn't happen until after deadline.
Yeah, because then that's what it is. That's why they moved the consent agenda before public comment, so that staff and people who had consent agenda items could go home, and then public comment happens, and then public hearings happen, and then they keep going on and on and on. And that's... usually there is a follow-up story the next day, because just the way the print deadline works, you can't be filing stories at 1 in the morning anymore.
Yeah.
Maybe back in the day, but not anymore.
You could if you had a morning edition or something, or the afternoon edition, but we don't.
Yeah. It's just the nature of the business anymore. It doesn't work that way.
So when you're going to the meeting, it's yielding 2 20-inch stories.
Possibly more. Depends on
what's on the agenda. Yeah. One of the things that's been on the agenda of late, and you've done a good job covering it, and walk me through it. Okay. There's a developer that wants to build a new project in the corner of Belmont. Is it Belmont-Carlton?
Yeah, Belmont-Carlton.
Belmont-Carlton.
Off Nassau Street, yeah.
And I'm pulling up Nolan's stories now. This story initially went, I thought, underreported with the progress because it was included almost as a brief in the CBJ on Sunday, the Charlottesville Business Journal. CBJ is still going. Yeah, in the CBJ. And then I was like, geez, this is a freaking money story here. And then I think it got more pulled to the center as the weekday editorial staff came on Monday morning from the weekend transition. Walk us through what's happening in the corner of Belmont and Carlton now.
Yeah, so Justin Shimp is working on wants to work on the Hogwaller farm, which would be sort of an urban farm with, housing and then part of a farm and farm market proposal. It's kind of gone underreported, I guess you could say. It's because
underreported.
He introduced it earlier this year, I think maybe in February, and then said, you know what, part of it's in the county, so we're going to wait. I want to wait for the city to act on it until the county acts on it. And so the county didn't act on it till September, and then it went and they approved their portion of it. So it's about 7.5 acres in the county. And then they went to the Planning Commission in October. They had some concerns, and they decided to hold a work session on it. And then last night it came before Planning Commission, and Justin Shimp brought a packet that had, some updated floodplain information and his response to the new proffers that had been offered with the special use permit. And proffers are just, conditions that you'll say, I'll do this with my development.
Yeah, it's a way to sweeten the pot for the city.
And there were Lisa Green and Tanaya Dowell said that they were very upset that, this had not been brought before them before the meeting. And most of the meeting last night was going over the stuff that he was presenting at the meeting.
And then he lost.
And I think that really frustrated them.
That set the negative tone.
As soon as his presentation was over, they were very frustrated that, they did not have time to review this. Staff didn't have time to look at this, that the maps weren't matching what the maps on the GIS were.
Why didn't he do it? Did you ask him?
No, I didn't ask him because it was hard. He was pretty late. His planning commission meetings seem to run late, like city council meetings too. But I think that, and what Rory Stolzenberg had said, it was almost, in some ways it's like, he should not have presented this there. But then in another way, he's getting this proposal. It's basically, Rory was saying it's basically a written form of what a developer would normally do at a planning commission meeting, because they go up there and say, all right, I had said that I'd do this, but how about I would do this instead, and instead of actually writing it down, that they would just be doing it on the fly. But Rory's concerns were the floodplains, and that's, and that's what a lot of the people who are against this proposal have said, that it is in a floodplain. And he had presented a map that said that not the entire parcel was in the floodplain because FEMA was updating them, and then Lisa Green tried to pull them up on her computer, and it wasn't exactly lining up with the maps that he had. And there was just a lot of concern that, this just isn't. And she was also concerned that they were putting so many conditions on it that it was like they were trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. It just wasn't, that it was just too much. But it was very divided, and not everybody was there. But then at the end of the meeting, they kept going back and forth and trying to decide, because the way the planning commission works is that they make a recommendation to city council. City council doesn't have to follow it, so they have to also make a recommendation to, if you don't follow our recommendation, then also do this. So they were going back and forth of, if we think that you should deny it, but if you approve it, you should put these conditions on it. And they were like, well, why are we even doing that? Because we don't want them to approve it in the first place. And that's kind of how everything went down last night.
Guys, we're talking with Nolan Stout. He is the City Hall reporter for the Charlottesville Daily Progress. He's got a story in today's newspaper, which I think you should read. Pick up the print edition or go to dailyprogress.com. A little synergy there for the Daily Progress right there. The headline is, Charlottesville panel recommends against urban farm proposal. Here are my takeaways from your story. Takeaway number one is this has been going on for over a year. As an entrepreneur, do you need more water? Are you good?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Judah, we're sounding good back there? Okay. Here's takeaway number one, Charlottesville. There's a developer and an entrepreneur who's trying to take a undeveloped piece of property in the corner of Belmont, the Belmont-Carlton Neighborhood, to build a 30-unit apartment complex and urban farm. I thought the brand and the project very much fit the identity and character of the neighborhood. My number one concern is, why in the hell is this taking a year to even get to this point? Another thing that terrifies me, and I could talk about a tip for you.
Sure. Let me just lay in on that first part. I think that a lot of the problem with that you come up with in Virginia a lot is that this parcel straddles the city-county line, and the way that Virginia's set up is the independent cities that they're.
So you're saying he just has bad luck in that the land is in both.
Yeah, and so he had to go through the city process. He had to go through the county process. He wanted the city process to be on hold till the county process wrapped up, and so it took till September for the county. Then he had to come to the city and then go through there. And a lot of
good point of clarification. You're educating me here. That's a good point of clarification here. But still, that is a long time.
Yeah, and it takes, especially there's because of where it is in the floodplain. There's floodplain reviews. There's site plan reviews. They have to do engineering, and they have to come up with the designs. They have to have site plan conferences. There's a lot of stuff that goes with development. There's
a very huge, I'm going to take a sidestep, and then I'm going to weave it back in. Lisa Providence, thank you for joining us in the broadcast, the editor of the CVille Weekly, watching you here. Lisa Providence, this guy Nolan Stout, making good moves in journalism circles in Charlottesville. Read his byline, Lisa. Paul Spencer on the broadcast as well. Here's where I'm going. There's a very prominent property in Charlottesville. I can't talk too much about it here. Okay. Very prominent property that a developer has an idea for this project. This developer told me it's going to take 2 years to go through the Charlottesville rigmarole of getting approval on his project. Where I'm going with this is an entrepreneur myself, as a business owner myself, as a man who I think has some vision. If I come up with an idea to better an undeveloped piece of property in Charlottesville, a piece of property that would include, I think, 2 to 3 affordable housing units. Not a lot, but still, I think he said 10% of the project was affordable housing. This guy is taking an undeveloped piece of property that is probably generating low tax revenue for the city, not enough tax revenue as it should for that piece of property. He's figuring out a way to generate tax revenue. He's figuring out a way to add 2 to 3 affordable housing units. He's adding a sweet urban farm to a neighborhood that I think it could turn into like a Brooklyn with like some hipsters growing like their tomatoes and their Sasquatch or whatever the hell it is in their backyard, like a community garden. Yeah. I love the idea. It fits the neighborhood. Start open-ended here. I mean, were you, and I understand you can only say certain things as a beat reporter, were you surprised that it went down 3-2 like this?
Once
the people that voted in favor are the new guard. The new guard on the Planning Commission. The people that voted against it are the OGs, the old guard.
I think that a lot of the concerns, I think it was very soured after he brought all that stuff to
what was his body language like when he lost?
He did seem very
dejected,
upset, but it was split. It was not unanimously against. So there is, the council could take a different stance, which they have before. But I think a lot of the issues with the development review process, there was a work session in late October or early in November where they talked about neighborhood development, and that department and the zoning code needs to be updated, that the department needs to be streamlined, that they need new software system, that it's taking things a lot longer to be reviewed because they're overworked, people are going through weaving in and out of the process because the process isn't necessarily that efficient. So that's some of the things that they're having concerns with, that they're trying to get fixed, but it's going to take a while to get fixed.
Do you think that the developer, in retrospect, should have handled things differently? It sounds like to me he should have made this presentation from day one, and he wasn't organized for it.
And that's what Lisa Green had said last night, that the Planning Commission chair, that this was the 4th time that they were hearing from him, because he had come in April and asked for deferred action. He came in October, then they had a work session, then they're having this meeting. So they had heard from him a lot, and that they just wish that this had been brought to them sooner. That it wasn't necessarily that they didn't agree with it, they just didn't think that this. And that they weren't singling him out. They were like, people have done this before, that they bring stuff to the meeting. They're like, we need to have everything ready to go. That's why we get our packets a week before, because it takes us that time to review it and look at everything. The packet itself, I think last night was maybe 140 pages.
Stop it. He presented to them?
Well, no, not that. Like the entire Planning Commission packet. Like that, they have all this stuff to review, so they want that. I think his packet was maybe 4 pages. But
but still, that's a lot.
Yeah,
for
on top of the staff report, on top of everything else.
I totally see where they're coming from.
Yeah, it's a legitimate concern, but developers usually come up and they have handouts. They just want to, show their project off.
There's one developer that seems to be doing more projects than any other, and that's Core and Capshaw and Riverbend Development. Core and Capshaw seems to be getting approvals left and right. Core and Capshaw is doing redoing the Crescent Halls building across from his building over here. And he's doing it, and he seems to be like, I think he's an asset to Charlottesville. I think he's a tremendous influence on our local economy, our local music and food scene. Just curious, are you hearing in City Hall circles, obviously you're hearing the name Corin, but how is this guy getting approval so much? I mean, is this something that's coming up? Because I know the other developers in town, and I know the other power brokers in town, they are legitimately asking, how is this guy getting so much approval on all these projects when we are struggling so mightily to get approval?
Yeah, I haven't really heard anything about him because a lot of my time has been the City Council, yeah.
Yeah, City Council. You got a good beat, dude. Nolan Stout, our guest, we're winding down the program with him. He's been kind enough to join us. You have filled 50 minutes, and it's felt like 7 minutes. So you've done a very, very good job. I'd like to get to know you shortly here from like a little bit of personal side of you and kind of like what you're into. Before we do that, I want to ask you, are you working on anything good? Anything down the pipe here that we can expect?
Nothing in particular.
Melissa Castro left, dude. Since Melissa Castro left the Daily Progress, Melissa Castro was the fabulous Daily Progress beat reporter. Since she left, you were the first byline I read now. I go to the newspaper, to progress.com. I literally type your name into the search function, and it aggregates and lists all your stories. I do that before even clicking the news box on the menu bar. Okay? First one I read is your byline. And I honestly believe that a lot of people are like that as well, because I'm hearing your name from a lot of important people in town, and they appreciate the courage that you've shown with some of the reports of late. What are you working on?
Well, tonight there's a City Council work session on behavioral health that they'll be discussing, substance abuse and treatment and stuff like that, and services and how they can invest in that ahead of the budget next year. The other long-term thing I'm working on is just, it's always an election year in Virginia, so I'm looking
3
forward
spots
to,
up on
looking
council.
to 2019, not just there, but also the entire General Assembly, all 100 members of the House of Delegates, all 40 members of the Senate. There's 3 seats on the city school board. There's 4 on the Water and Soil Conservation District. There's the Board of Supervisors, Clerk of Court.
How do you see the election playing out in Charlottesville? 3 open seats. What do we got? Bellamy,
Signer, and Galvin.
And Galvin.
I think that this year is going to be the first time that, when August 12th happened, it was after the filing deadline. So honestly, the people who got involved in government after August 12th is going to be their first chance to actually try to, win election, because they couldn't win it in 2017 if they weren't already on the ballot. So if they want to get on the ballot this year and continue that, the momentum that has risen from that to, address the underlying problems in Charlottesville, this is going to be their first chance. So I think there's going to be I think that there will probably be a lot of candidates that run this year, because of the activism. I mean, in every meeting, every city council meeting, there's standing room only. Like, you just have to think that, at least a handful of those people are going to want to throw their name in the ring.
I think Wes said in one of your stories, he said at a meeting that you quoted in one of the stories, having 7 people, or I think that was the number, having 7 people run in a city with a population of 50,000 is not a lot of people.
Which is different, because I had, the last city council election I covered in Harrisonburg, there was 4 people who ran in a city of 50,000 people.
4?
Yeah, for 3 seats.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. It's like position where half the town is going to hate your guts.
Yeah, I mean,
and on top of that, you're underpaid.
That's what comes with it too. I mean, and that's some of the concern that they've brought forward with the getting paid for their seat, is that they don't. It does that. Some people think they think it's a barrier. I mean, I couldn't tell you either way whether it is, and I haven't talked to someone who has said, I ran because I had enough money, or I didn't run because I didn't have enough money. But it is a factor to consider, especially with the way that the government has changed.
May I play devil's advocate with you on that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So my devil's advocate point with you, and I appreciate your perspective, is when Wes Bellamy ran for city council, he was a teacher at Almore High School with 3 young children. And when Mayor Walker ran, she was a part-time hourly wage employee at Charlottesville Parks and Rec.
Which she still is, yeah.
Yeah. So where I'm going with this is there's the perception that the lack of pay, councilors make $18,000, the mayor makes $20,000. the lack of pay means only a certain demographic of person can run for council, specifically someone who's an entrepreneur that can make their own schedule, or a retiree, or someone who's independently wealthy and has deep pockets and doesn't care that they're working these hours for such little money. Where I'm going with this, I don't believe that statement. And why I don't believe that logic is Mayor Walker and Councilman Bellamy. Neither Mayor Walker nor Councilman Bellamy were entrepreneurs, independently wealthy, or retirees. Councilman Bellamy, and I think everyone would say out there that teachers are underpaid. Councilman Bellamy was perhaps an underpaid teacher at Albemarle County High School with 3 young children, and Mayor Walker was an hourly wage employee at Parks and Rec, or is. Now, so those two debunk the statement or the stigma that low pay only means a certain kind of person runs for council.
Yeah, and I think that they might also be referring to, especially with the affordable housing crisis, some of those people who are in that, in the poverty side that are very interested in the government and want to, even though they might be in that sector of the city, but they want to make a difference, that they might be focusing on that necessarily, but they haven't, said, it's affordable housing people we're talking about, but it could be, because I think that there's probably going to, if there's a lot of people running, there's going to be a lot of money put into this election. And honestly, it's probably going to be whoever wins the Democratic primary, because it's such a Democratic city. Because, like you said, Rob Schilling's the last Republican.
Bob Fenwick tries to run as an independent, has no shot at winning. Just changes to Democrat and wins.
Yeah, it's going to depend unless everybody decides to run as an independent, because, it shouldn't. Honestly, I've seen sometimes party politics plays a role in local government, but Wes Bellamy's a Democrat, Mike Sinner's a Democrat. They don't vote the same way on everything. Everybody's a Democrat except Nikaya, but they don't vote the same way on everything.
She ran as independent.
Yeah. They're not.
But that's an anomaly.
They're not unified.
Do you think?
It's actually it is an anomaly based on the party system. Yeah. Just the statistics. But I think that she was one of. I think we're possibly going to see a lot more people like her next year, who are more at the activist community that has since August 12th has taken a really big stand, has come to all the meetings. They want to do everything.
The one gentleman who's always at the meetings and speaking, is his last name Gathers?
Don Gathers?
I think so.
Yeah.
He's constantly speaking, always at the meetings. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him get in the mix.
I haven't talked to him. I know he's on the Police Civilian Review Board, so he's involved. And
are you hearing that Bellamy, Signer, and Galvin will run again? And I'm going to ask Kathy a week from Friday. She's coming on the show. Yeah,
I've reached out to them all. I haven't heard back from Wes or Mike, but Kathy said that she didn't have any comment at this time. So
she said she's not. I have not. I'm undecided.
Yeah, she said she didn't say undecided, but she had no comment. So I take it as the same way. She hasn't made a decision.
And Mike and Wes did not respond?
Mike said he'd get back to me by the time the story ran, and I haven't. I texted Wes. I need to call him and send him an email before.
I think Wes is going to run again, and I think he's going to do one more term, and he's going to parlay that term into maybe like a state Congress run, 5th district. 5th district will be tough. Something. Okay. I don't think Mike's going to run again. I think Mike's been through hell and back.
He's definitely had.
Dude, he's had it tough.
He was the mayor during August 12th, and you can. Dude, he did things right or he did things wrong. Either way, he was the mayor position is the focus point that everybody goes to.
He caught, whether deserved or undeserved, he caught a lot of the flack.
Yeah, and that's whoever's mayor. If anything that happens, people will go after Mayor Walker because she's the mayor. She's the figurehead. Whoever's the mayor after the next election, whatever issue comes up in the city, they'll go after the mayor because they're the mayor. Yeah, and that extra $2,000. Let me throw this to you, okay? And we'll wind down. You're crushing it today. Thank you, Nolan Stout, guys, our guest, Charlottesville Daily Progress. What I would encourage you to do if you really want to get a good feel for what's going on at City Hall, and I'm doing it right now, go to dailyprogress.com, go to the search function on the menu bar, the little magnifying glass, and type in the name Nolan Stout. Okay, that's what I do. First thing I do when I get to the newspaper since Castro left the paper. A lot of folks have said the city would be better off an award system. Have you heard this? Mm-hmm. Where it's like you chop the city up, which is roughly 50,000 people, into 5 10,000 person districts, like City of Chicago. Yeah.
And you could have something potentially like the Belmont, North Downtown, 29 North area of Charlottesville, not across Albemarle County, of course, maybe down south side Charlottesville. Does this have any merit? Is this just wishful thinking?
I mean, it depends, what you want. I mean, there's arguments for or against it. I mean, the arguments against it would be, some people might say, who's going to draw those lines? Are they going to be, we're going to put, the low-income people all together? Are we going to, try to segregate it? Are the people who are in office going to have that? Are they going to try to make sure that they get reelected? What's it going to be?
If the low-income people, if the low-income demographic are in one, Roger Crawdaddy Crawford, thank you for joining us to the program. If the low-income demographic, say we take CVille and turn it into a district, what is wrong with CVille having its own district and having its own representation? Here's where I'm going with. It seems to me that someone is much more able to represent a neighborhood or 10,000 people as opposed to 50,000 people.
Yeah, and that's the argument for is that you've got the people who know your area of the city, but then of course there's also the argument are they only going to want to focus on things that benefit
in their
part
neighborhood
of the city? Or
right.
I mean, there's that too, and then you don't want to have the districts necessarily be where only African Americans are in one district or two districts. Like you want them to have a chance, everybody to have a chance in every district.
But I would think though, Nolan, that the districts, and we're spitballing, two dudes spitballing here, I would think that the districts are going to be cut if this ever happens based on where folks live. And if the districts are cut based on where folks live, then we're going to have a predominantly white districts and predominantly African American districts. There are not many African Americans that live in North Downtown. Right?
Yeah.
And if that's its own district, that's going to be predominantly a white district. So how can that be even prevented?
Yeah. And you also have to look at it too, if that system is implemented, the people who are in council, they might both live in the same district. So people are going to get, are you going to get somebody on council who's going to be like,
Dude,
all right,
I didn't even think about that.
Let's set up this ward system so I can not be elected again. I mean,
so you're basically saying
that's the step that people will have to take who are on council. There might, I don't know their addresses. They might all, two people might live in the same neighborhood. So
well, if they lived in the same district, wouldn't the ward system prevent them both? Well, they would have to run in the primaries of the district.
Yeah. So this is what I'm saying is that they would set it up so that the next election, one of them would be gone.
Right. Exactly.
So you would have to assume that it's in a way it'd be like
a second election.
In a way, it'd be like expecting someone to say, "All right, I'm going to make sure that there's a 50% chance I'm going to lose my job." Like that's what you'd be asking, and they might be willing to do that.
But you could potentially have some very powerful people in a district where if they set up the district this way, that they know that they can hold the district seat for 20 years. Yeah. Because there's those folks that not every neighborhood, a lot of neighborhoods have those go-to people where they're like, this is my neighborhood. I'm representing this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And it also, it could cut down on turnover on council because, the way, there's the nature of districts. If you just look at the state senate, like Emmett Hanger's been a senator almost my entire life. Bob Goodlatte was in Congress before I was born and just now retired. Like, there's there were people, just who have been in government longer than I've been alive in the same positions representing the same people. So they've
cornered the district.
Yeah, that's how it can happen. You never, that kind of thing could happen, but it seems like there would be more competition, but you also don't want to feed sectionalism. Right. It's something that could happen. But then again,
walk me through that.
It's like, okay, this is my section of city. When I come to budget sessions, I'm going to think, how's this going to benefit my section of the city, not the city as a whole.
If I play devil's advocate with you, if you have 5 people going into a meeting with the mindset, I'm going to do what's best for my section of the city, each person is representing their city because of the given pool, maybe that's the betterment for the city in totality.
Then there's also the willingness of those people to compromise. Possibly they're not getting something as good for their neighborhood so that the city as a whole benefits.
Would the ward system need to have the charter amended?
Yeah.
So the charter would have to be amended, then it would have to go to the Virginia Assembly. So the reality of this happening...
It would probably take... the stuff that's happening, this charter amendment that just got sent to the General Assembly won't, if it is passed, it would take effect July 1st of next year.
Of 19.
If they passed it next year, it probably wouldn't be the next general election cycle, which would be in 2021. So it would be a while before it actually happened.
So the ward system, and we'll wind down on this note, the ward system, while maybe good in theory, is far, far, far away.
Yeah, and everything has its pluses and minuses. I mean, you can argue either way. I mean, it's you either like it or you don't. I mean, it's something different. That's what the city is really looking at, trying to do something different. I don't know if that's what they're going to go for. They might go for the strong mayor. They might not. They might go for a direct election. Who knows?
Is anyone getting more traction or popularity than the other from the people you're talking to, the strong mayor or the ward system?
I've heard more people mention the strong mayor
Yeah.
than I have the ward system. But again, even Nakaya has said,
Interestingly, the strong mayor could. It'd be interesting having a strong mayor at such a sensitive time when potentially, say, like an activist can get tremendous momentum behind him or her to win the popular vote and become the strong mayor, and next thing you know, running the city.
Yeah, and then there's that, and then some people have said, I think there might have even been some councilors who said that you might have a mayor, you might have your top administrator this year, and then 2 years later they're voted out of office, and somebody has to come in and just redoes everything.
Yeah, so you have no consistency.
So there's some sort of instability. There's some sort of instability with it.
Yeah, it's not cohesive. All right, let's close this way. Nolan, Stout, our guest, you did well. Thank you so much for your time. An hour you have filled up, and I feel like it's been 10 minutes. A lot of good feedback here as well. How are you relaxing? What are you doing for fun? I know you have no time because you're grinding, covering council. What are you doing? Where are you going for bars, for beer, for wine, for a cocktail, for food? You got to have fun.
I try to, but I usually just fast food is all I'm really having time for because, like Elliot says, is anything but Kroger going to be open when I get
living
out
in the city
meeting?
of Charlottesville?
Right off Barracks Road, right outside in Albemarle.
That's a good spot. So you got like a 4-minute drive to work.
Yeah.
How's it going over there at the Progress?
It's going good. It's going good. We're getting the full staff. We've got our new education reporter, Catherine Knott, came in, and now that the craziness behind the James Fields trial has kind of ended, things are starting to stabilize again. So that things are going well.
Yeah, Jenny Rector, still in the mix?
Yep, she's
Jenny
still
Rector,
there.
city reporter,
City
editor.
Yeah.
Jenny Rector, good people. John Shiflett over the sports desk, right, as the editor. I appreciate you, man.
Yeah.
Can we do it again?
Sometime, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Nolan.
Yeah, thank you.
His name is Nolan Stout. He killed it today, guys. Check his byline out in the Daily Progress. The first byline I read when going to the Daily Progress. Tomorrow on the program is Damian Banks, an entrepreneur and businessman behind the BCBA, doing big-time things at Tonsler Park and in Fifeville. Robert Gray from Dream and Diamonds on Friday, and we are already booked solid for next week, including Kathy Galvin a week from Friday, City Councilor, where I'm going to ask her, hey, Kathy, you running? You running or you're not running? I'm Jerry Miller. I want to thank Nolan Stout. I want to give some props to Judah Wickhauer behind the board for making us look good. As always, Greenberry's Coffee for more than 25 years has been Charlottesville's longest-running coffee roasters. Also thanks to Scott Wagner Chiropractic and Sports Medicine. Charlottesville, please be good to each other. Enjoy your day.
Yeah, thanks.
Can I get a phone number? You like text?
Yeah, sure.
You think that went well? I thought it did.
Yeah, that's right.
Try to be fair. What you got?
919
Okay.
548 6120.